Right now, we are just letting everybody shuffle in. I'm your moderator here, Paul Rossi with 910 Drones. Joining us today is Lieutenant Brandon Fitzhugh with the Spring Lake. He's the UAS program manager with the Spring Lake Fire Department. How you doing today, Brandon?
Hey, how's it going, Paul?
It's going. Let's see. Getting this brought up here for sharing out. And also joining us today is Sergeant Rick Smith, the UAS Program Manager with Antioch Police Department. How are you doing today, Sergeant Smith?
Very good.
Awesome, very good. And the last face joining us today is Antonio Cugini. I think I said that right. I may have butchered it. Antonio's with FoxFury Lighting Solutions, one of the co-hosts of this webinar series. This is the last part 6 in the decision-making. Let's go ahead and do that. This is part 6 in the decision-making drone use webinar series, which is focused on public safety and getting folks in the fields of fire, law enforcement, emergency management, the information they need to help build, manage, and support strong unmanned systems programs in order to help serve their community. So additional co-hosts of this webinar series, we have Insight Fire Training as well as FLIR Systems. So a shout out to them and thank you to Andy Starnes and Mike Chapman who are a part of making this team and this series success. So without further ado, I'm going to have us jump. Am I sharing this screen here? Great, everybody's been just seeing this going here. Let me drag this to the side. We're gonna get started talking about the topics that we'd like to cover. Okay. And during this webinar, we're going to be talking about flight operations manuals and standard operating procedures. Just one second, I'm going to get a title typed in here and we're going to go live. Thanks to everybody who joined us today and to the folks who have been with us since the beginning of this webinar series. We thank you for your support and we appreciate you coming back and tuning in. So let's dive into this now that we should be good to go on Facebook. We'll bring this up. All right. So during today's webinar, Building and Managing a Public Safety UAS Program, we're going to be covering a few different topics. And we've got Brandon and Rick with us. Both have years of experience operating drones in public safety. And we're going to hear about how they've navigated their programs, how they built them, and how they are managing them successfully today. What we really want is for you, the audience tuning in, we have a Q&A feature here. So if you've got any questions, please go ahead and throw those into the Q&A section. And our panelists, our guests are going to do the best they can to get you the answers that you need. So the topics we're going to be discussing are the Flight Operations Manual and Standard Operating Guidelines Procedures, Pilot Certifications, Talk 107 and COAs, Hardware Software Purchases, Training, and at the end, we're going to touch on safety and risk mitigation just before we wrap up with some closing remarks. So again, during this, we're really hoping to get some really good questions and feedback from the audience tuning in. Let's get started here talking about flight operations manuals and standard operating guidelines or procedures for folks that are in, let's see, we got chat, okay, right on. For folks that are tuning in, that are really looking and are at the very beginning steps of building out their drone program. The important thing I think that all the folks that our panelists tuning in could touch on is networking and finding and having resources in order to get information. Because a flight operations manual is something that most folks are going to have zero experience working with. So with that being said, Lieutenant Fitzhugh, can you kind of jump into a little bit about flight operations manual, standard operating guidelines? What information should the folks tuning in that are at kind of like step one, what should they know, and where can they find some information?
So when I got started, I had really no clue. So I did a simple Google search, kind of got some things brought up. So it kind of gave, step by step of what we would need. And because we were just doing it as like recreational when we first started. So then I found a group on Facebook, exactly the one you're looking at right now. And then everybody on there just connecting. And they had a file section. So I really use this file section. I didn't really invent nothing, and I just adapted it to our current program. And it's really been very helpful.
So, sir, what is, we talk about a flight operations manual, but does either of you want to kind of talk about in general, what is a flight operations manual? What are SOGs in relation to drones and public safety, and why might it be important?
So with us, I got the SOGs pulled up, but it's basically going to be everything of how, the start to the finish of the incident. What can possibly, come from the incident, if there's going to be safety protocols in there. And basically, can you go farther than what just that incident? Is it going to be adapted to another incident that could arise from it? So ours is all about safety. I know the fire department, that's a big critical thing with us. So, we got cone placement, when we use ladder truck, how we got to use ladder truck, loss link procedures, all that.
Okay. So if someone's trying to put together a flight operations manual, is this something that has to be recreated from nothing? Is there, how might somebody kind of conquer putting together those procedures and figuring out what it is?
So no, you don't have to recreate from anything. I came right here to the public safety part of Facebook, and there's all kind of information in here. And I just picked and just picked through everything to create mine that will work for my department, because everybody's department is a little bit different, with your law enforcement, fire, emergency management, et cetera. A lot of this stuff, like this one here, Maricopa Police Department Air Support Operations Manual. A lot of the stuff that I use as far as mine came from like Florida's teams and all that, because they had the money and they was already established programs. So I knew that they would, be successful with my stuff. I just kind of, took what I needed and adapted to our little department.
Right, gotcha. So folks are already operating with FOMs, SOGs, and identified procedures. So if we look at these different resources, the Public Safety UAS Working Group on Facebook, people are sharing this because they understand the importance of sharing what they've already learned and what is going to help others. So that's really good. Sergeant Smith, what can you add? What do you want folks tuning in to know? And again, is anybody, if anyone too at this time has any questions about flight operations manuals and guidelines and how to put some of these things together, go ahead, feel free to ask your questions. But Sergeant Smith, what can you tell us about when you started a program with Antioch Police Department? What kinds of things were you looking at during this?
The first thing is to find out what my needs were and how it's best going to fit my needs. And then we went out and explored other agencies that already had programs, like Alameda County, Modesto. You know, they had some great, those two agencies had a great program up and running already. And there's no point of reinventing the wheel. The information's out there, and the only way we get this better, because this was a, I hate to use the term, but a kind of a bastardized system put in by the FAA initially, because they didn't know what to do with this, how to manage this, and then the 107 comes about. But these operating procedures are already out there. Guys were already being safe on their own without FAA stepping in. So don't reinvent it. Go explore all these out there. Look it all up. Like the lieutenant says, Google search it, get in these other groups, see what they have, and then adapt it to fit your needs. Sometimes plagiarism is the best in this field, because if we're all working on the same platform, we're all thinking the same way. And then we're also going to expand and learn from that as well, and start changing this as needed as a group, not one person out in right field, one person in left field, and then no one knows what anyone else is doing. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, just make it better.
Yeah, exactly.
And the biggest thing, like I said before, I don't mean to ramble on, but share what you do so we all learn from it, good and bad. So if your operating procedures aren't covering what you're doing, change them and share what you did wrong, because we're going to learn more from our mistakes than our successes.
And I knew when we got started that basically, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. It kind of just one of those things that we had an incident that luckily paid for us a drone, you know, but I knew that we didn't have a lot of money. So that was the only way to do it. I couldn't just go out and, you know, pay an attorney and all this kind of stuff. So just by looking through these forms, I kind of just pieced together what I needed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Helps out is I was going to say, sorry, but another one is to reach out to your local FAA director and get his input. And he's going to be the one that's up on the new stuff coming in, and say, hey, we're going to try this. See what he has to say about it. And you might learn something that, yeah, that's already being approved. This is coming your way. Yeah, please do that. Let us know. And he wants your feedback as well.
I know my FAA director he gave us a format, and then he had everything from a local department that we used. And he's like, it's already been approved. This works. And that's how a lot of our stuff got done.
We did the same.
And the importance here, flight ops manuals, you have this, it's the guidelines. It explains how you're going to respond to calls, how you're going to handle data, how you're going to be operating the drone when you're out in the public. Why are you operating the drone? What systems you kind of have in place for safety and risk mitigation. So this is something that is not going to cost an individual anything to put together. It will take a little bit of time, but now after, you know, we're well into the 107 era with UAS public safety programs. So going back to the UAS public safety Facebook group, we have Luis Martinez, who will shout out, because that's who posted that Maricopa flight ops manual. You can go there, you can read through these things and pick what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and build this out. It's not going to cost you any money. You don't have to own a drone to do it, and you don't have to be Part 107 certified. But once you put this operational manual together and you take this to the decision makers, the folks who are going to help you make the next step in putting your program together, and you show them this, they're going to understand that, you know, you're ready to go. You have things in place already. You've already taken into consideration all levels of this program. So encourage folks to get on those groups and check that out and look into it, and then reach out at the end here. We'll have, you know, the contact information for Brandon and Rick, and you guys can reach out to them for any sort of assistance. But with that, we've touched on Part 107 certification. So we'll move into, I think you guys still see my screen, right? Awesome. So we'll move into talking about just that, pilot certification, Part 107 and certificate of authorization. In the past, I've seen some folks talk about this topic here, and it's Part 107 versus a certificate of authorization. Like it has to be one or the other, or it's this or that. There's certainly some entities and organizations that are operating with a COA. However, they're still having pilots get their Part 107 certification. The COA is going to offer some additional benefits that the standard 107 won't, but these nighttime operations of multiple UAS, these are things that you can get waivers for under Part 107. So with all that being said, it's important to note that every drone program starts with a FAA Part 107 certified remote pilot. Someone has to become the initial 107 pilot that's going to be doing these operations. And if you're going to go the route of a COA, this individual will become that responsible person who is responsible for what happens and what fails to happen within this drone program. Pretty much the leader, not the leader, but again, the responsible person who is going to be certifying and training pilots within the organization. Before we can dive a little bit into the differences, but I want to get out of the way a little bit and let each of you talk about this step in building a program for each of you. So Sergeant Smith, if you could tell us how did you tackle the certification aspect of building your program?
What we kind of worked into is what was going to be our direction we're going to take our program, what were our needs, and what were going to be our specific uses of this. We're in a very diverse county, and it's a very large county, and other agencies call upon others for mutual aid on a regular basis. So we didn't want to get locked into one generalized area for the COA. And we took along the lines of having all of our pilots being a 107 pilot flying under waivers. As a liability aspect, it would make them a better pilot because they've gone through an FAA training program, they've followed FAA guidelines, they've tested, passed, and got their license, versus an in-house training program, which can be challenged in a civil court if there's a mishap. Yes, the FAA program and the 107 can still be challenged, but you've gone through a documented training program, you passed a federal standardized test, all the above, versus in-house. Because in-house, you're bound to make a mistake somewhere. Your COA may not cover all the aspects, whereas the 107, you got a little more leeway. Again, and then it puts upon the pilot every 2 years, they're recertified by retaking their test. So that makes sure they're current. And it doesn't put our training records in jeopardy. Did we miss any? Did we not miss any? Did we not current? All the above. So that being said, we follow the 107 guidelines versus going to a COA. And we went that route, and that seems to suit our needs better because we're more of a tactical team than we are just flying and mapping, which we're now exploring into mapping.
And then could you just refresh my memory? Are you guys operating within any controlled airspace?
Well, it depends within the county where we're at. If we fly into a neighboring city, we have a very active airport in Buchanan inside the city of Concord, and you're in controlled space. And if we go over to the side of the hill and we're into closer to Alameda County in the San Francisco Bay, that's a heavily traveled space. Plus we have Travis Air Base up towards north of us, which we're part of their flight plan. Nothing in our city is affected, but if we get called up there, we have to adjust to that as well. And then there's some other small municipal airports we deal with as well. But for the most part, my entire city is all G. We don't have any issues outside of the restrictions around certain power plants, things of that, and everything else. But outside of that, nothing.
Okay. So, but you're prepared, like you said, with being ready to go into those areas for support by having the certificate of waivers for airspace or the airspace authorizations for the neighboring controlled airspace, which you could obtain without having.
We go through Lance, get our clearance, get our approval. We know our restrictions. We've made contact and we know you know, the tower representative at Buchanan, we know on a first name basis, and hey, we're going to be flying here today. And we can get clearance quicker just through the tower, just because we have that direct link if needed. You know, there's a main freeway that ends with a pursuit and a guy bailing into the field. We need to go up with a drone or the helicopter's not available. We've had on multiple incidents, and we get permission. And then, but again, it's using, you know, like Air Map or Kitty Hawk, going through Lance and getting that clearance quickly. And if it says redirect, we sometimes just get straight clearance from the tower.
Excellent. So 107, the ability to make sure that pilots understand the airspace that they're in and the regulations that they're operating under. Lieutenant Fitzhugh, can you tell us a little bit about Spring Lake Fire Department launching the drone program and pilot certification?
Yeah, so
and touch on too, and I just want to say to touch on how you got that certification. Was it locally? Was it through some type of community? Was it through a university? What resource did you use to become a certified 107 pilot? And then Rick, I do want to circle back after Brandon answers and just find out what training you went through to get that.
Yeah, Paul.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Basically, after our incident, so we knew that we was going to start a drone program. Well, local community colleges was holding a UAS training type certification. So it was not Part 107, but it explained how everything worked through FAA. So we can go take our Part 107, and it actually had different parts in the exercises where we're doing like hostage situations. So that's when my mind started working. Well, this is not just for fire related. This could be a whole, avenue of stuff. So right after that, I took my Part 107, passed it, gave me, it really opened my eyes up of how the whole program worked with FAA and what they was looking for.
Yeah.
I know our community college is the one that held it. I'm not sure if they're still doing it or not. But yeah, that and watching YouTube videos. There's a lot of good YouTube videos on the Part 107.
Okay, so the local schools, I know here in North Carolina, there's tons, and it seems like every day there's someone locally that's connecting with their community college in order to do just that, provide Part 107 training, Part 107 certification classroom training, as well as some additional hands-on training in order to help drive and increase the integration of drones within public safety.
I know when I took the class, and I don't know how the PD side works, but our class was basically free, just because I was connected with the fire department. So it was no money for our department, to send me to go learn about Part 107 information.
Excellent. Now you guys can see, the thumbs up, you're just seeing the presentation only, correct? Okay. I wasn't sure if you're seeing like the questions coming in or not. Sergeant Smith, your process to get that certification, and then the pilots, what are you using for training? Are you kind of locally or? And you're on mute.
Sorry, graveyard. Anyhow, we actually sent myself and all of our pilots go through the Los Angeles County Regional Training Center, LACRTC. It's a company out of Southern California, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach area, and that offers pilot certification and training, everything from your basic 107 licensing to management of a program, all the way to advanced tactical operations. So we send all of our pilots through that program, again, to try to minimize our liability. And then we continue and expand that training in-house at least once, maybe twice a month. We all meet as a team and we train. And then we document this, so we have the background, flying the mission sets and just staying up on our skills. But our biggest thing was getting our pilots originally through the program was to send them, like with most law enforcement, you know, you don't put a firearm instructor in front of the line, tell him to start teaching how to shoot a gun unless he's gone through a firearm instructor's course. Same thing with defensive tactics or any other thing that we teach. You need to have the education background. We did the same with our pilots. We wanted them to go to an educated source to get certified and educated in what they're getting into, and then fly with that knowledge.
I like that. So local training, and there's more of that coming up, specialized training, because just getting the 107 is kind of the beginning, and we'll touch on kind of operational training in a couple slides here. But I think local.
If I can add, we actually reached out. There's a member in our group, Joe Ladner from the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. They have a rather large team, and we, knowing him personally, we got together. We were bringing their team and my team together, along with all the other entities in the county, and we actually opened it up to any agency in the Bay. You're welcome to come and attend, and we trained together. One example was we did a mass search and rescue training with search and rescue and all of our pilots. We had multiple drones and rotary aircraft in the air at the same time, training together to expand that mission set and let us all understand the dynamics.
Yeah, that's a super important, especially bringing folks together that have that advanced operational experience to be able to show and demonstrate to others what success looks like, and then to be able to say, we didn't start here, right? We've grown here, we've incorporated all these things. We talked about part 107. We also mentioned earlier the public safety, the UAS for public safety working group. Can you guys see my screen right now?
Yes.
The Facebook screen? Is it the Facebook screen? Okay. For folks that are going that COA route, again, just like the flight operations manuals that are in this files section here, there is also an absolutely amazing COA guide, step-by-step, put together by Brandon Carr out of Texas, who's doing great things to help drive the education, adoption, and integration of drones within public safety just across the whole country. But if you go to that file section and you're in that position where you're saying, hey, we're in controlled airspace, we want to bring on, you know, a lot of pilots, and we're willing to kind of take this approach on. If you join this group, you go to your file section and search for certificate. You're going to find the public safety certificate of authorization form. So this right here is going to be a phenomenal step-by-step guide that's going to walk you through what you need to do in order to obtain your department, agency, organization's certificate of authorization to operate drones. So it's all about the resources, not recreating things. Find the folks that are willing to help advance and drive this industry forward. So to bring this back up and kind of wrap up the piloting certification, no matter what, whether you're going COA or 107, you're going to have to, you know, if you're the person that's kind of tuning into this webinar right now and you're looking at how am I going to build, as in start and create this program, step one, if you're not 107 certified, you need to figure out what training locally, whether it's through community colleges, universities, public safety networks within your area. But getting that 107 is that first step. And then say, COA, are we going to start having other pilots get certified? The tools are there, the information and resources are there on that UAS public safety site. So now we'll kind of move into the hardware and software purchases, which is really where most folks just, and we've got a question here before we'll go just back a step to the certifications. John Colloway had asked, he mentioned that he heard volunteer fire departments could not get a COA because they are not government entities, but are typically run by a nonprofit board like our department is. So Part 107 pilots was our only option. Is this still the case?
So it's very possible.
So,
I know our department is a municipality, so it was a little bit different. We have more pull, you know, and when it comes to grants and everything, the smaller volunteer departments have a way bigger chance of getting grants to municipalities. So there's a trade-off. If you still can do 107, I mean, that's great. It depends on your airspace. But yeah, that's kind of where we went, just because we are a municipality.
great. Thanks for that, Brandon. And we'll definitely be diving into this question to try to figure out if we can't get, you know, some information and see if this still is the case or not. And then we had another question from Christian Dick, and he was asking, are you using SGI? And this may have been back to the Flight Ops Manual SOG's conversation. Is anyone familiar with what that acronym would be, SGI? I think like student government. I'm not sure. Not ringing a bell for either anyone within the public safety. If Christian, if you're still tuned in here and you can type in maybe just a little additional information to help clarify that question, that'd be a special government interest. Are you using the special? Say again, Rick?
Sorry, keep going. I interrupt you.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I guess he asked, are you using special government interest? Do either of you, does that ring a bell?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It don't on my end.
Not in my world.
Okay.
I'm not. I mean, I could learn something new right here. So I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's in reference to funding or if that's some sort of training or operational procedures.
Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office is using SGI waivers. Maybe you can type in a response to explain a little bit more, so I'll have something in the chat that can explain that.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. Everybody's learning. We all come here, we all come to these events to learn.
Yeah, Joe and I bounce stuff off each other all the time, just because we're local municipalities and we work closely together. But as the sheriff of the county, they have a more expansive area that they fly and they deal with than we do. We deal with our city. We respond when called out, but for the most part, they're flying a huge county and with multiple pilots at times. So he can probably expand if he writes maybe something in the chat to explain on SGI and the waivers and what they're used for and how to get them and how important they are. Because I know they get you into a lot of more airspace quickly and exempt you from a lot of things.
Yeah, and Joe, we have Joe here mentioned it's dealing with getting emergency access to controlled airspace. SGI is emergency flight flying under a COA blanket. So emergency access to controlled airspace, this to me would be a specific thing for folks that are operating in these, you know, where your airport and you've got the zero grids. So obviously emergencies happen within these zero Lance grids where you just can't, it doesn't matter what app you use, it would take otherwise a long time to get authorization. You can go through these SGI waiver processes, and in the chat here we've got folks rolling through it more. And there's clearly folks who are or at zero Lance grids or at night. So now it gets a little, like, I understand the zero Lance grids things, but at night, I understand with a COA, you can easily obtain authorization to fly at night. So again, it's to deal with airspace authorization. And we'll dive into this in future events. And in regards to 107 operations within, controlled airspace, and then COA operations within controlled airspace. Because we've got Brandon, Spring Lake Fire Department operating here under, Class C DOD airspace. And as long as you're communicating and in touch with your local ATC, your biggest hurdle is going to be sending in the paperwork to get your DJI drone unlocked so that you can operate in these areas, which benefit for these folks, in these areas of operation. Your Autel Evo 2 series drones, you get your SGI waivers, you get your COAs, and you don't have to worry about getting manufacturer permission to then operate your drone. So kind of a little shout out benefit when it comes to hardware and software, which just happens to be what we rolled on and we're talking about. So thank you to the folks who are tuning in and in the audience that are familiar and have the information on these topics. We appreciate you guys being able to help straighten everything out and get the information out. Hardware and software purchases. There is all sorts of drones out there. There's all types of marketing materials and specials and sales. And there's always, 2020 is the year of the new drone. And there's been drones announced at the beginning of this year that we still haven't quite even seen hit the market, and it's all still talk. But there's also been some equipment that has come out. And when we're talking about hardware and beginning a program, you can focus on the one drone, the one ring that rules them all, and try to go after that. Or do you focus on identifying what hardware and software might just meet your department's initial needs? Sergeant Smith, if you can kind of touch on, hardware, software, initial needs. What does that mean to you, and tell us how things got kicked off with Antioch Police Department?
Well, it seems everybody wants to go out and spend the $50,000, $60,000 on the big matrice and have that one do-it-all drone or UAV that you have. The only problem is it's large, it's bulky. You have everything on it's expensive, and you can't do it. Our initial needs is we wanted one pilot on every one of our patrol teams. So we have 6 patrol teams from day shift, swing shift, graveyard on both sides of the week. So we want to have a pilot available readily. Plus, when we do tactical operations, you need multiple pilots for overwatch, interior flight, all the above. So instead of spending that one big lump sum on one drone, we took that money, split it up, and got all of our pilots through a 107 school, equipped them with their own assigned drones, at the minimum a Mavic Air and a Enterprise 2 with either going to be a Zoom or a dual, because originally that's the direction we went. We're now expanding into other drones and building that. And the benefit of that is you start building the background and making your team how important it is and what it can contribute. And then you'll find the checkbook start opening up, because you just proved yourself by how and what you're doing. And once that's seen, then you pretty much start getting the equipment you need to either fulfill your other needs and expand your team. So you got to look at your mission set and what you're actually doing and what your needs are, and evaluate what you're going to spend. Some smaller cities don't have that budget. We happen to be a medium-sized city that does have a budget, but then again, I was held to limits. I started a team with less than $30,000, and I've got 6 pilots flying 12 drones. Actually, each one we got 12 drones. Now we're at 18, and we're expanding to 3 more pilots.
That's great. That's excellent. That's program growth, and it required good management and training and operational procedures. And it's showing the folks, it's taking in the beginning what you can get and showing to folks, and proving to folks that this is a valuable tool, it's a valuable resource, and it's going to support the community. And focusing on the positive impacts of the drone as it is, as far as support during disaster and lost victim, things like that. because initially trying to take drones for some operations in public safety could get not the most welcoming response from the community as a whole. So, Brandon, your initial needs kind of arose naturally, would you say? Pun intended?
Yeah, it was very much unintended. It started out as a hobby, and then we had an incident as far as, a hurricane, and that's how it all, kind of got started. And then when it proved itself in the hurricane and I was flying as a hobbyist, basically that's where the funding came into play, because we got some money back from FEMA. And then, obviously the pictures proved, priceless. So that opened up our town to start writing checks for our stuff, our drones. And it's kind of grew, and we ended up getting grants and everything.
So initially it was here in North Carolina, every year you've got hurricane season. And along with hurricane season comes flooding. So knowing how drones can be leveraged to support the various response operations, I think is a great initial need and use case. And to be able to take that and say, what can a drone do during a hurricane response, which includes flooding? And to go back to what we saw earlier during this webinar series with Brandon Carr out in Texas, which was using that drone to respond to that hurricane and the disaster, is being able to map a large area and collect data and preserve that information. So seeing that a need and what is that solution and how do we get that? And you don't have to have the large drone. You don't have to have the most advanced sensor. You can take in their response in Texas, one of the drones they were flying was a Mavic Pro. 12 megapixels, not the best sensor on the market, but no less it's a tool that they were able to use during that response. So taking these flying aerial visual sensors and finding how you can actually turn it into data. So would you say that kind of, you mentioned, was able to help take it to the next level? And then after seeing that initial need and then having flooding again, what was it, 2 years later, not very long later, the flooding occurs again. So you're able to use that tool, but then building the program and showing the benefit. How else did you use that drone in other ways once you got it? And how did showing people lead to you growing the fleet and adding additional drones? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. So basically, after the hurricane, I used a $300 Phantom 3, and it was a very inexpensive drone. But once the money started coming back from FEMA, it kind of opened up everybody's eyes. Like, this could be a huge thing. And I've already been telling them, but the proof was right there when the check started coming back. So that's why I got a pretty good check just to get to Inspire. At that time, I didn't know very much. So I kind of just went out and got Inspire too and said, this would be great, without doing much research, honestly. So a $300 drone, went to a $7,000 drone for the Inspire. And we put the drop system on it for dropping life jackets. So if we did have another flooding, we could drop life jackets or ropes to them. But then we knew that at nighttime it was kind of pointless because we didn't have any kind of like FLIR or nothing like that. And our main job is more fire protection. So we need to get something with FLIR on it. So, after proving just those small things and doing searches with it in daytime, we decided to apply for grants, and we finally got the Maverick 2 Enterprise, which had a FLIR, which kind of compromised, and gave, at nighttime I could use the Mavic 2, or daytime I can use the Inspire. So it kind of helped out in both worlds, and gave the town, a 24-hour coverage.
Yeah, excellent. I think you kind of mentioned it, the Inspire too. Was it the right purchase? Maybe not, but again, part of building and managing the program. And since you figured a way to make that a very useful tool, it's got an X4S camera with a mechanical shutter, so it's great for mapping. So you guys, leveraging that for pre-planning and disaster response, and then being able to adapt that platform to have the payload release ability. So folks here in the Little River, within your area of operations, you can use that as a tool to support responses. And then getting to the point where we talk on this slide about, connecting with local dealers. There's folks all across this country, and we have folks tuning in that are all across the country. And there are people locally that, have the tools, have the personnel, have the ability to support your operations, and they can do that through demonstrations, as well as like familiarization training with your purchases. So look everywhere, turn over all different rocks when you're considering kind of what hardware, software, and tools to purchase. We heard get creative with funding. One thing I do want to bring up, because this is why folks tune in, is they want to know what drone to get. And yeah,
just add in on this funding. I don't know if many know, but a lot of these large retailers have a first responder grant program. The biggest ones is Walmart and Target. If you go into their pages, every year they will give $5,000 away at a drop of a hat. Recommendation is you find your local Walmart or Target and make friends with the manager, because they're the ones that approve that money.
Correct.
And you can buy a lot of equipment with that $5,000, lights, radios, batteries, drones, and at times they'll actually gift you. Our local Walmart gifted us 2 Mavic Airs and $5,000.
Yep.
So we were able to use that money to build our program more, and it's very simple to do.
And if you're going after these, thermal drones, so we've got the Evo 2 series. Folks that are looking at drones, you've got to look at the Evo 2 series lines in that public safety space, having that 6K with that 1-inch sensor, which folks have been talking about for mapping. You've got a zoom on it. It's affordable. It's rugged. It comes in a great package. You've got your dual. So right now, folks that are thinking about thermal, IR, we want to get into this sort of operations with our drone, look at the Evo 2 dual with a 640 thermal sensor, with a really great price point, and you can do a lot with this. These Evo 2 drones are coming with Pix4D React, which is part of their ability to connect with public safety and really add value. So Pix4D, you're going to be able to capture those pictures. I see there's some chatter going on in the chat about mapping and whatnot. So fast 2D mapping of different areas to enhance situational awareness. That's something that users that purchase these Evo 2 Dual are getting. Also, solid platform, working on a limited budget. I know Brandon with Spring Lake Fire Department, the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, the capabilities are far less in regards to sensor quality than the Evo 2 Dual, but it has some value, and it could be that first step to the next thing. With Rick, you touched on the Mavic Mini, and you can go buy these other great drones, but a Mavic Mini Fly More, this trainer aircraft that you can put in the hands of folks that you're starting out. It doesn't have to be that $5,000, $10,000, $15 drone that they're learning on. And this is a great on the law enforcement side to be able to take inside buildings. So there's so much you can do with it. And talked about mapping with go ahead.
Adding to the Mavic Mini, it does have its limitations. It doesn't like wind and interior flight without the proper lighting on it. It won't fly in dark places. So you have minimized lighting with our interior flight. You have to add the lights, and it has to be there. You'll lose about two minutes of flight time, and it doesn't like any adverse wind. So it's great for interior flight, not for exterior. Our go-to has been the Mavic Air and the Mavic Air 2. Those have been amazing for interior flight. They'll fly anywhere, especially the Mavic Air 2 with the OcuSync now. It gets rid of that Wi-Fi problem and connectivity, and it flies further and better. And then if you add the FoxFury lights, this D10 that you're showing now, you pair that top and bottom on a Mini, along with a Firehouse, like a 2-strobe white to the rear, that will fly anywhere now. And it doesn't take any flight time off. These lights are absolutely amazing. On the Mavic Air,
Yeah,
you pair that to the top of a Mavic Air along with the D3060 on the bottom, and now your Air will fly anywhere you want to go because you have all the lighting for the sensors. We call them the scared drones. When they don't have lighting, they're scared. They won't fly in dark places.
Yeah.
You light that room up, they fly everywhere.
right. And we've seen that in this previous webinar when we did the integrating drones in law enforcement. And again, we can't say enough for the folks that are just tuning into this as their first one. You can go back, and at the end of this, we'll show you how to see our previous webinars where we've really hit it hard on the different operations and the procedures associated with drones being used in public safety. But lighting is key, and this FoxFury Lighting Solutions D10 light is a real bad light, and it's a lightweight, and it puts off some real illumination. So thanks for making that point. And we talked about image mapping with photos and how Pix4D comes with Autel with the Evo, and it stitches image fast for 2D. You've got to, when you're considering a drone program for public safety, you have to look at mapping. You've got to consider mapping software. And SkyBrowse and the simplicity and the results that you get when operating a UAS with this software, it's just really second to none. Through 910 Drones, I've trained folks in the public safety sector on 107 and also hands-on drone piloting. And going through like a drone to play a Pix4D, there's just extra steps. There's some things involved. SkyBrowse is night and day, the ease that you can get the drone up and fly. So that's one of those things that the folks tuning in, you've got to consider looking at on a software side, because it works phenomenal with a drone like the Mavic 2 Pro, which is inexpensive. So you can do a lot of great, amazing things from mapping, modeling, Overwatch, live streaming, which we can touch on and we will in future webinars, but there's just so much more that you can grow your program into. So focus on the initial needs of your program when you're considering hardware and software and kind of how you want to move into drone operations, and get creative with the funding. Sergeant Smith mentioned it, and go ahead.
And also, some other software to think about is also think about your drone management. How are you going to manage? No one wants to run 15 Excel spreadsheets, keeping track of your batteries, your flight time, your training, hours, and logistics of all your drones, maintenance. There's a ton of software out there that does this for you. We're currently using a program called AirData, and this AirData is about the same price as about anything else out there, but AirData is absolutely amazing. It keeps track of everything to remind me to have battery maintenance and how many cycles to go back and inspect my batteries. So if I have an incident, I can go back and tell you what the weather conditions were when that accident or incident occurred and what kind of input that pilot was giving at that exact moment. So I can say if it's pilot error or it was mechanical error. So when the FAA comes knocking on your door after you cause the damage, you can print them a report and say, here's all my data, and here's all my training records, and here's all my maintenance on this drone. And you're not scrambling to go through and look for all your Excel spreadsheets that may not be up to date because you didn't spend the 2 hours adding all that information in there. It does it for you automatically. On top, it offers a live streaming platform that I could send to Paul on the East Coast my flight on the West Coast, and he's watching with less than a second latency. So you got to evaluate that. It's just a program I'm very happy to be with, and it's reasonably priced. For the number of pilots we have, we're paying less than $4,000 a year for unlimited streaming data and maintenance. And if you price out other programs out there, it's not touchable, and especially the time it takes to keep those maintenance records up. So that's just
that's a great point, and especially for folks that are going to go down that COA path, because we didn't talk about it too much. We ended up in down the SGI road, but on that slide it mentions how if you're going the COA path, you are going to have to provide some additional program information to the FAA on a regular intervals. So having that data collected up, and these air data, and then you've got RMUS that's got some fleet management that's powered by air data, and there's some great folks on the West Coast of the United States. But yes, that kind of software is going to help on multiple levels. And then I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sergeant Smith, but is live streaming integrated into air data at this point? May or may not be. And then John, I believe is tuning in here. I think through their fleet management may be now integrating some sort of live streaming capabilities, which I think, in my opinion, when it comes to public safety, live streaming and then mapping and modeling are just two of those huge unlocks that drones offer that folks need to kind of be able to jump into and integrate into their departments.
Live streaming with air data is incorporated. It's an extra cost versus the maintenance, but it's a minimal cost when you think about the intel it provides. An example would be as a sergeant and as a pilot, when I'm flying or my other pilots are flying, we can live stream that out, and then everyone in my fleet or all my crews or in the department, even the chief at home, can log in and watch that stream live. So as we say, if we're looking for a missing person, or if we have an active incident, or we have a SWAT operation, they're seeing the live stream as we're going. My team leaders on my SWAT team are able to watch this as we're clearing the interior, taking those blind corners out. They're watching, so number one, they're getting the visual layout of the house, they're knowing it's clear, and they're getting a live update as it occurs versus, here's a stick drawing of what the house is supposed to look like. They see what it looks like. Same with what we have in progress, we're seeing it live. So that live stream is invaluable. And it works with our fire department as well. We've had California that is burning for how many months now? And we've had local fires here. We'll go up and I'll go shoulder to shoulder with the battalion chief, and I'll show him that, and he's live streaming that to his captains on their rigs through an RTMP stream, and they're getting to see where to attack that fire and put that out and knock it out quick.
Yeah, that is awesome. There's huge value in the live stream to be able to get, again, it's decision makers, getting people the information in order to make quicker decisions, get things where they need to be faster. Last point on this slide, and we're kind of, coming up on the end of the hour here. So we're going to ease into a closing, but like everything else, and you touched on, Sergeant Smith, with the funding is the getting creative. And I just want to say there was someone I spoke to out of Ohio with the, I don't want to say his name, I don't want to use the wrong name, but he was with Upper Township Volunteer Fire Department, and they're on a budget of $60,000 for the entire year of this volunteer fire department, and yet they've still been able to build up, and we're going to bring them on to talk about their program. But even with that limited budget, now they've been able to build a program where they have an Inspire 1 with an XT camera, and they've got a Matrice 200 drone, and they've built out this program. But they did it by connecting with, and I probably mentioned it somewhat, but what they had is in their community, there was that juvenile facility to where folks would run away. So they were called out often to help search for these suspects, but they didn't have a drone. And what he saw was how valuable a drone with a thermal camera could be to supporting this operation, and talked with the folks that managed that facility, and was able to work out an agreement to where they would support and provide funding to help obtain a XT camera, so that whenever they had a runaway missing person, they could come out there with that XT camera and provide a better solution to help identify these runaways. So it's getting creative like that, working within your community to see where you can provide a benefit. Is there anything else that you guys want to add in regards to like hardware, software purchases, funding? Antonio, anything?
The biggest thing I can say is don't go buy the biggest, baddest thing just came on the market. Don't go buy the XP 9000 because it just came out and it promises to make you dinner, because you just wasted your money. Find a proven platform that's been tested, because I guarantee you there's an agency in my county thought they did that with a certain drone who is now out of business. And luckily for them, that company was willing to buy those drones back. Otherwise, they were out $60,000 for 2 drones because they thought it was the biggest, baddest thing out. They learned the hard way. So don't always test, offer most of these companies, Skydio, DJI, Autel, all of them. If you go to Ventrex, Travis will send you an Autel to test before he sells it to you. Fly Motion will let you demo out a Mavic before you purchase it. Paradinafi was brought up. That's another great platform that's amazing. Compact, easily stored, easy deployed, interior, exterior flight, all this about. So don't go buy that, what everyone else says. Think about how you spend your money and spend it wisely. Try to get the most for your money.
I definitely agree, because you got to think, it's not just buying the drone. Like, you're going to have the future purposes of, are you going to need batteries in a year or stuff like that. I mean, there's all kind of benchmarks you got to hit. So you got to think about the maintenance part of it as well.
Because it would suck to
go you go after that big,
and you buy this drone, you buy all the batteries, you spend a ton of money. We all know how much those batteries cost alone. And next thing you know, well, that's not our mission set. It doesn't fit us well. We need these drones. Well, you just bought all that infrastructure. It's like, plan, think about it, ask, get on the web, do these meetings, meet with others and learn what does and doesn't work. How much does it cost?
Right. Connect with the locals, see who's available locally, whether it's dealers or other organizations, other public safety groups that you can connect with and get hands-on with these drones. Now, with that being said, we're going to quickly, I just want to quickly have each of you kind of discuss training, because I think training, and after this, we're not going to push too far past the hour here, but training. I know, Rick, that's your thing, and I've kind of said this too from time in the military. It's all training, and then train the way you fight. So, you've got to train the way you're going to do it out in the field. Otherwise, you're going to get used to not doing it the right way. So let's start with you, Sergeant Smith. You've mentioned in some of our previous webinars, tell us about creativity in training, because you've mentioned, flying a Mavic Mini through your squad car, and what's up with that? Well,
you got to push the envelope. Never just get stagnant. Okay, this is what works. Go find something new. Do something new. That's how you expand, and you expand what we can do with these. We fly interior, we fly exterior, we fly Overwatch, we fly towers, we fly everything you can think of. Don't just go out and get the Nixus buckets and go fly the buckets. Don't go fly through square window frames. An example would be how do you open a door that's partially open with a drone? You can do it. It's just a matter of knowing your limitations. And we learned that if you take a Mavic Air, you can open most doors as if while you're pushing forward, give it a little bit of downstick, so you're sliding down the door, and that prevents the drone from flipping up into the door. And you just got to find your sweet spot where to push from. You learn these things by practicing it. I encourage my guys and I challenge my team every time, come up with something new. Okay, we'll do the basics, but that gets stale and stagnant. If you find a business that opened up, or you've got houses being built, or a tilt-up concrete buildings being built, go approach the foreman. Hey, can we fly here? Houses being, or something's abandoned, go fly it. Warehouses. A great video was one of my fellow instructors, Tim Martin from Huntington Beach, who's a captain, flew a stack of a decommissioned plant next door. He took a paradenofi and flew out the top of the stack from the bottom. It's a 150-foot flight. And he flew out the center and came out the top of the chimney, just because he wanted to see if it could be done. And that's just testing the envelope, and it tests your skills and makes you a better pilot. Plus, make it a competition. Who can fly the best? And it challenges your pilots to get better.
Yeah, that's great. And then safety. Always do it. Fly through that stack knowing that if, one thing leads to another, there's always that safety mindset, that you're not, pushing that safety envelope. You're pushing the envelope of the hardware or the software, but, safety at the forefront.
I'm not saying don't be safe about it. What I'm saying is think about your operation is going to be, approach it, talk about it with the other pilots. Is this feasible? And then practice it.
Yeah. Try new things, but in a safe, controlled environment. So then when you're out there, what could possibly go wrong, what our capabilities of it. Like we use our ladder truck, and that right there, you don't hardly hear about people using ladder trucks for visual line of sight, but when you're up there 100 feet, is the wind, going to be a factor, everything. So those are definitely things to look at.
And like I've said before, because we've heard from Bruce Sandy with the Pender EMS and Fire, how they've used, a 150-foot line on a matrice in order to, deliver some water to folks that are out stranded. And Sergeant Smith, I think you're one of the safest guys I know. It's just for our audience to know that it's not right or wrong, but it's like, is this safe? Are we doing this with safety in mind? So I know you're 100% on board with that at all times. And how is training, how is having regular training going to help building out a program in regards to developing pilots? Like, not just that they're 107 certified, but now putting them out into the, to respond to a call, putting them out on the streets. Training kind of plays a role in preparation for that. Would you say, Sergeant Smith?
Well, training is everything. I encourage my guys, like I said, train, and then burning batteries. Electricity costs cents. And you don't want to be on the stage and everyone, especially from admin to city, whoever's there watching over you, and you're the one flying this flight, and it's something you mess up on. Why? Because you didn't train for it. You don't have the confidence. When you test them to fly through obstacles and to fly more difficult missions, you're building your pilot's confidence in it, plus building his ability to control that aircraft. He knows the limitations better. So if you're not pushing that envelope in a safe way and with a safety management program in place, when it comes time to fly that difficult mission, you're going to be a deer in the headlights and freak out. And then if something does go wrong, they have the experience to recover. So they can manage those emergencies when the unexpected happens. They're experienced enough to know, okay, thumbs off stick, let it stabilize, come back, fly again. Or, if I'm in this kind of wind, here's what I need to do. Where I need to approach, upwind or downwind. Expect that speed change. So without the training, you're looking at a pilot, number one, not having the experience to do those difficult missions. And then again, you also got to talk about liability. And, you're dealing with an aircraft, and some accidents do happen. And if that accident happens, you have the training to say, it was an accident mishap. My pilot was well trained. It wasn't carelessness. If it's carelessness, you're going to pay. If it's an accident, you may still pay, but you're not going to pay as much. So you got to have that documentation just to show your training experience of your pilots and their level of experience. But then again, overall, it builds their confidence.
Now, moving on right through, we talked about training, and then we just got into safety and a little bit about how that leads to mitigating risks. So solid training, safety and risk management. You've got training in place, not just to train for what we're doing operational wise, but also what is our emergency procedures? What do we do if we lose GPS and we go into ADI mode? What do we do if we have a lost link? What do we do if, we get a large amount of birds that just all of a sudden begin to fly within our vicinity of operations? What are these emergency procedures? With the Skydio 2 drone, and you mentioned it, Rick, the X2, with this autonomous platform that might start doing things that the operator has had to do previously, what happens when that autonomous feature fails? That's when the pilot is stepping in to take over. And that's what the importance of training is for that scenario, for that instance. And we have to do that in order to maintain safety and reduce risk. So we have these things that are built into our flight ops manual. We have these operational guidelines and procedures that say, not only is this how we're successfully going to do what we need to do, but what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if somebody runs into our flight area or our launch and recovery area while we're taking off? All these aspects. So I want you guys to just kind of touch on how you guys kind of bake safety into your programs, just briefly. And do you guys kind of educate everybody in the department about drones and the procedures, or is this something that you're strictly just focused on the pilots? And when I say everyone in the department, at like a basic level, so people might be able to step in and support kind of the operation. Lieutenant Fitzhugh, you want to go ahead and lead this off?
Yeah, so no, we do educate everyone in the department, just for uses, because they could be on the radio and can be used for like a VO, just real quick. But yeah, a lot of times when we pull up on scene, we basically are assigned an attack channel, and then we'll have the trucks blocked off and create a safety cone net just for landing, and taking off. So we try to keep the public away, because the public always wants to come around and check it out and, let me see the screen and all that kind of stuff. But there's times that you can kind of come out and show them, because you want the public to be educated. That's a huge thing with us. We don't want to hide nothing from the public, as long as we can educate them like during that operation. But if we can't, then we need to keep them back. So usually the trucks, they won't pass the trucks, or we'll put caution tape up or something.
Awesome. Sergeant Smith, is there anything, you want to hit on just in regards to safety, risk mitigation, and,
we, before every flight, we do a safety briefing. And we talk about what our MOCAs are, our obstacles that we're going to hit. What's our, minimum obstacle avoidance. We talk about that. What's our mission? And we assign, you have this elevation. We talk about it. And as we're flying, if we have multiple drones up, we're talking, I'm 125 off to the north, or I'm at 100, and we always keep a 25-foot interval between our drones, and we're flying multiples. And we keep them in different directions, and we always coordinate. I designate one of my pilots who's not flying as ATC. He's controlling the landing and takeoffs. So I don't have someone accidentally trying to land when one's launching. That's on a big operation that we do for our SWAT ops, or a big scale. So we always set that safety plan, and like I said, we brief and we talk about it. And then when we're done with the flights, we debrief those flights. What worked, what didn't work. Then we practice emergency operations, emergency descents. I force my guys to fly in ADI mode, to teach them how to control that with actual stick inputs. And most of my guys have reverted over to being, first person pilot, or flying their actual racing drones now. A couple are challenging to make them a better pilot, because they understand you have to have those inputs. So it's about having those mechanisms in place to train them to think safe and to constantly review the safety plan.
Yeah, that's great, Sergeant. You mentioned is how do we increase safety and reduce risk? Well, we need to identify potential risks and threats. And how do we do that? Well, we do that through operations. So that's awesome, after action or after flight reviews, to where you can say, hey, during this flight, we had to overcome this risk. And how did we do it? And how should we plan for that ahead? Having this way of reporting and recording what happens is certainly going to help reduce and eliminate risks in the future. The next slide here, I know we're about 16 minutes over, and appreciate everybody who's kind of stayed tuned and still paying attention. I just want to move into some closing statements from both of you in regards to, as a whole, building and managing a UAS program, and just kind of what does that individual who, if you were talking to yourself when you first started your program, what kinds of advice might you give? You want to go ahead, Brandon, start us off?
I know if I was talking to myself again, basically just be slow down. Understand 100% of what you're doing. It's because, you do something with a small hobby drone, understanding the rules, all the FAA stuff. Like I had no clue with that when we first got started, and it was a big deal. And then once we did get the money, I wasn't prepared to really spend it. So I just spent it on what I thought was, perfect for our department. So really just slow down, do your research. That's the main thing. I know budgets are, they're tighter than ever, especially with COVID going on and everything. And you just need to spend it right the first time. You don't want no buyer's regret type deal. You need to see about, if you're a fire department or police, maybe speaking like emergency management, because that might be more money that you can get from them, whether it be like just regular funding or through a grant process. So just definitely be slower and try to understand things, ask questions, connect with people locally that's doing it. I didn't have anybody really that was in my area doing anything. So I kind of had to learn trial through error, and just watching everything on the West Coast and how they were spending their money is what really helped out.
Excellent. That's great advice. That's great advice. Sergeant Smith.
Yeah, I can't but add what Lieutenant said, explore your options. Don't focus and get, vapor locked on one item and one thing. This is what I want to have. There's multiple resources out there to educate yourself. At the same time, kind of know what the environment you're in and what your mission set is. Some agencies are going into getting community buy-in before they get the program up and running, and the program's dead in the water before it even hit the ground. We chose the other way. We asked for forgiveness instead of permission. My chief and my city manager said, get that program running. And then when you're done, we'll go back and educate the public, which we did. And once we showed them the safety benefits and the mission sets we could do and what these were, that we weren't flying in to go spy in their windows, and see what, who's doing what where, that we're using these for real missions, the entire city bought into it. You're going to have the naysayers, of course. And we also had our city council who was skeptical, bought into it. So you got to understand your platform and what your environment that you're in to get that buy-in. And you asked about the departments, our department as a whole. We trained everyone as a visual observer. So I can grab anybody in my department as a visual observer, and they understand the safety plans and what their goal is and what their job is. At the same time, they have an understanding what our capabilities are. We brought all of our officers out and we showed them what we can and can't do. It's become to the point now they're responding to alarms. Hey, is the drone available? Boom, check the rooftop, set up a perimeter. So they're checking the front, someone runs out the back, the drone's chasing them. So these are things that you got to think about when you're starting this program. Is number one, community buy-in, administration buy-in. That's the big one because they're the ones signing the checks. What equipment is going to fit your mission set? And just don't pick anyone that puts in for being a pilot. You got to look for maturity. You got to look for someone that's tactically sound. Look for someone that makes quick decisions on the fly, and they're good decisions. You don't want someone who's got 6 months on the street or 6 months as a firefighter that's never really been to a huge fire or been to a big crime scene. If they don't have the experience to think about the big picture, they don't need to fly. It's the same with our canine operators, same with all of our supervisors. You have to look at the big picture because there's so much liability involved. One mishap, you can lose your entire program.
Yeah, thank you, Sergeant Smith. That too was really, really insightful information for anybody tuning in that's either just starting a program or even as they're building a program, what they can continue to do to maintain success. We had one question. I just don't want to go without missing this. And after those awesome statements, but do you know off the top of your head, and it might have just got answered, if you can input information? I think you went ahead and took care of that, Sergeant Smith. So thank you very much. Looks like we've gotten all our questions answered. Hopefully, thanks to everyone in our audience for tuning in and participating and asking your questions and joining in on the chat. As Lieutenant Fitzhugh and Sergeant Smith said, get out there, search. And I really like what Lieutenant Fitzhugh mentioned is patience. That's the word. I just be patient and don't rush into anything and connect with folks. Get information from the folks that have been there and done it. And with that being said, I'm going to throw up the email addresses for both Lieutenant Brandon Fitzhugh and Sergeant Rick Smith. So anybody that has any questions in regards to building and managing a public safety drone program, or if you're interested in how you apply drones for fire services, reach out to Lieutenant Fitzhugh. And how are folks integrating drones into law enforcement? Contact Sergeant Rick Smith with Antioch Police Department. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. This is the last scheduled webinar in our decision-making drone use series, which is co-hosted by FLIR, FoxFury, Lighting Solutions, 910 Drones, and Insight Fire Training. We appreciate everybody who has tuned in and participated during each and every one of these webinars. And we're really looking forward to pushing out and providing more educational, insightful content to help folks that are trying to integrate and use drones within the public safety space. So reach out, anybody that, if you're within fire, law enforcement, emergency management, disaster response, and you have a program, you have a story, you have some experience or insight that you want to share with the folks in this community, please reach out to myself, reach out to Antonio through 910 Drones or FoxFury Lighting, and get in touch with us, because as mentioned, we're going to continue to provide information in events like this, and we want to be able to tell the success stories of the folks around this country in order to help others. So thank you for tuning in. I don't know, Antonio, any you want to add any words or thoughts?
No, just a thank you to everybody. I'm going to quickly just give you guys my email and Paul's. But yeah, just thanks so much, Rick and Brandon, for all you've done. And please let us know what you thought. If there's anything we missed or can communicate afterwards, let us know and we'll take care of that.
Excellent. Awesome. So thank you. Thank you, Sergeant Smith. Thank you, Lieutenant Fitzhugh, for joining us. We look forward to, watching you guys continue to succeed within the drone industry and continue to grow your programs and really make an impact. And we know that the experience, information, and insight you guys have is going to, help others within the community. So, thank you very much on behalf of everybody involved. And thank you to our audience, and everybody enjoy the rest of your evening, afternoon, or day.